Wondery Plus subscribers can listen to Morbid early and ad-free. Join Wondery Plus in the Wondery app or on Apple Podcasts.
You're listening to a Morbid Network podcast.
Redacted, Declassified Mysteries is a new podcast hosted by me, Luke LaManna. Each week, I dive into the hidden truths behind the world's most powerful institutions, from covert government experiments to bizarre assassination attempts. Follow Redacted on the Wondery app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey weirdos, I'm Ash.
And I'm Elena.
And this is Morbid.
Wow, what a week, guys.
The true crime world is going off.
Stuff is just happening. Some good, like, justice being served stuff, and then some really scary stuff.
Yeah.
So we just wanted to quickly touch upon it because I'm sure everybody's got it in their heads. That Robert Durst was convicted of first-degree murder, which I feel like a lot of people are like, he wasn't already?
Okay, I know, because when I think, did you say it last night or
Yeah,
did Drew?
did.
You were like, oh, and I was like, he wasn't all right? Like,
is
I thought that
new?
happened.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, it's great. Like, awesome.
Yeah.
The Jinx, if you haven't watched it, go watch it.
Yeah.
I mean, Lux agrees, so I don't know if you heard that little meow.
Yeah, we're at my house today, and you might hear a cat or two.
You might hear some Lux, might hear some Franklin.
Probably
but
more Lux.
Either way, go watch The Jinx on HBO. It was really good. The other huge thing that happened, it's a case we have not covered yet, but it's always been on my list, and now there's some amazing closure, at least, to this case. There's been an arrest made in the Faith Hedgepeth case. This happened in 2012, Faith's murder.
That's so crazy that, like, just now it's happening.
Yeah, and it was, they were able to match a DNA from the crime scene to the DNA of Miguel Enrique Olivares, and he is being charged with first-degree murder.
Yikes.
This case is brutal, it's awful, it's so senseless, and I'm so glad that her family has got at least something. I know her mother came out and said, you know, all she did was cry when she got the news because, like, what else do you do? But
because it doesn't change anything.
No, it doesn't bring them back. It doesn't make it better. But they at least now know they have some kind of cap on it. This person did this, and we're going to get him off the streets. At least there's that. So that was huge, like, so huge. I'm so glad it happened. But those two things were like boom, boom.
And then last night we find out that Brian Laundrie, who is Gabby Petito's fiance or boyfriend, I read in some places that they had split, like they had like changed their engagement status and decided not to go forward with it. Significant other, exactly. But yeah, he just fled. And the police don't know where he is.
So he is on the run.
Yeah, but there's a lot of places, and I think it's really important to note this, that are saying he's missing.
He's not missing.
He's not missing.
Sorry.
No one kidnapped him.
Because regardless of what happened here, he went on the run. He's not missing.
Like he
that's
fled.
Just, regardless of whether he is guilty, innocent, or somewhere in between. That is, to say he's missing is just not true.
It's just not.
And I believe Gabby's family came out and said, like, he's not missing. Gabby's missing. There's a lot of weird stuff going on with this case. We're not going to repeat any of the things that have been floating around because I think it's until things are confirmed and until things are officially said about it. I don't want to sit here and go, well, I heard that this happened. I heard that this happened, because all we know for absolute sure is the last time he was seen was on Tuesday by his parents, and that's what they say to police. And that he is currently in places unknown.
Yeah, the attorney for his family said, be advised that the whereabouts of Brian Laundrie are currently unknown. The FBI is currently at the Laundrie residence removing property to assist in locating Brian. As of now, the FBI is looking for both Gabby and Brian. And then a few hours ago, actually I think about 6 hours ago, it came out that his family says they believe he entered this area earlier this week. And this area is the vast Carlton Reserve. It's a 24,500 165-acre preserve, which is north of his home. And they think he might be there. So police are out there like right now looking around and searching.
Man, this just gets weirder and weirder as it goes. But I'm still hopeful, holding out hope that there's going to be some kind of happy ending here.
It's like very bizarre.
It's strange.
Everything
I don't know what to make of it, but
just weird.
All I keep thinking about is like, I really hope that Gabby's okay. And
I know.
I feel so hard for her family. Like, her parents just break my heart. And I really hope that they get a happy ending out of this. I really do.
I know. And let's keep talking about it. Let's keep spreading her picture. Let's keep spreading the word.
You know, don't spread any pictures that are like Photoshop, because I know suddenly people are getting in on this and being like, I saw this. I saw them. And it's like, no. So just make sure when you share stuff that you make sure it's like confirmed stuff. It's easy to like make the mistake of sharing something that you think might be real, because we've all done it.
Yeah, of course.
Just try to like look just to make sure that we're sharing stuff that's going to help her family and not
from like a valid source.
Exactly. Which I know you all will do.
Of course.
I'm just saying. But yeah, so we are still thinking about Gabby Petito, and we hope that this has a happy ending, but we'll see. But yeah, that's the first ones that could come to mind were the Gabby Petito case.
Yes.
The twists and turns happening in that. And then
jinx.
Robert Durst, and then Faith Hedgepeth. That was a really happy one and a really good one. So let's end on that one before we begin this. But today, I don't know if you guys have noticed, but I did a couple of pretty gnarly, intense two-parters.
You did? I didn't notice.
I don't know if you noticed, but
yeah,
but
I felt that.
Yeah, I felt it really hard.
My psyche was right there.
Yeah, so I was like, you know what? I gotta go in a different direction this week. I gotta take my own mind into a different direction. I feel like it's the beginning of spooky season.
Yeah,
let's get it.
Less spooky.
So I wanted, New England during spooky season, during the fall is just I love where I live, but I also just in the fall, it's like
a dreamland.
It's a gift.
Like, I love it here.
It truly is. It's a gift.
It's not real.
Like, as soon there's trees in my yard that the top of them are starting to turn yellow.
Yes.
And I was watching it and I was like, I just love it here.
Hell yeah.
Like, I love it here. I love Massachusetts. I love New England.
The absolute best.
I'm such a New Englander. But, so I decided, I was like, you know what? I want to stay here. We have all that spooky history. I got to find something good.
Hell yeah.
And you know what? I found something good.
Okay, in Massachusetts?
Well, it's in New England. It includes Massachusetts.
I'm like, Massachusetts?
Massachusetts? You don't say.
Oh my God.
And I had heard about this. I've always wanted to like go further into it, and finally I did. So we are going to talk about the vampire panic. Yes, I said vampire panic in New England in the 17th, 18th, and 19th centuries.
Okay, I'm ready. I was born ready.
Yes. Now, before we get into this, this is like fascinating to me.
Vampires
it really is.
And also the fact that this is real.
Yeah, and just like what people thought vampires were, how this all differs from like country to country and place to place. But first we got to talk about a little bit about like death practices and death like beliefs in these centuries, because wow, things were different.
Yeah, I would go as far as to say that they were probably pretty different.
Yeah, like how different, you say? Well, often people would die in the home, which obviously happens still, but it used to happen like a lot more back then.
There was also like less places.
There was just, you were just dying in your home. That was just going to happen. But when somebody died in your household, it was important to never stand at the foot of their bed, because that may block their spirit's entry into the next world.
I kind of love that.
So like, don't do it, which I imagine people probably still practice today in some places.
Yeah, a lot of people,
like something you would.
A lot of people think like not even death related, but like sleeping, that you're not supposed to sleep with your feet like with like a window at the end of your bed.
Oh really?
Because
I didn't know that.
Like bad spirits.
Because like bad
come in. I don't know.
Because like bad. Ooh ha ha.
Ooh ha ha.
Ooh ha ha. Well, so you should also open all the doors and the windows when someone has passed away, so that their spirit has easy passage into the next realm. You don't want them doing like the bird thing where they go and bang right into the window. Yeah. You don't want that. So you open the windows so that they can just whoop
And also
right through.
it might start to smell in your house. So
Yeah, I mean,
it's a good call.
For practical reasons, and it's funny that you said that because the next thing I wrote in my notes was, this also to me is good for practical reasons, like allowing the smell of rotting decomp to slowly come out of the home and you're not breathing in death fumes.
Like fresh air is for dead people unless there's dead people in your house, in which case fresh air is for them. So open the windows.
So the fresh air is
fitting.
indeed for the dead people. Also, I almost elbowed Franklin, and that's why I said, ooh.
Don't do that.
But yeah, so, you open the windows, open the doors. You don't want them running into a glass door, thinking a really clean glass door. We all know how, you love a good Windex.
Oh, that Windex
moment,
is my jam.
But that can be really tough for a spirit trying to get out of the world.
I get it. I see
So don't
it.
do it.
Hotshot Australian attorney Nicola Gaba was born into legal royalty. Her specialty? Representing some of the city's most infamous gangland criminals. However, while Nicola held the underworld's darkest secrets, the most dangerous secret was her own.
She's going to all the major groups within Melbourne's underworld, and she's informing on them all.
I'm Marcia Clark, host of the new podcast, Informants Lawyer X. In my long career in criminal justice as a prosecutor and defense attorney, I've seen some crazy cases, and this one belongs right at the top of the list.
She was addicted to the game she had created. She just didn't know how to stop.
Now, through dramatic interviews and access, I'll reveal the truth behind one of the world's most shocking legal scandals. Listen to Informants Lawyer X exclusively on Wondery Plus. Join Wondery Plus in the Wondery app, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify, and listen to more Exhibit C true crime shows early and ad-free right now.
In a quiet suburb, a community is shattered by the death of a beloved wife and mother. But this tragic loss of life quickly turns into something even darker. Her husband had tried to hire a hitman on the dark web to kill her. And she wasn't the only target. Because buried in the depths of the internet is the kill list, a cache of chilling documents containing names, photos, addresses, and specific instructions for people's murders. This podcast is the true story of how I ended up in a race against time to warn those whose lives were in danger. And it turns out, convincing a total stranger someone wants them dead is not easy. Follow Kill List on the Wondery app or wherever you get your podcasts. You can listen to Kill List and more Exhibit C true crime shows like Morbid, early and ad-free right now by joining Wondery Plus. Check out Exhibit C in the Wondery app for all your true crime listening.
They also carried corpses out feet first, when they would bring them to the burial grounds, because if they didn't, then the dead person would have a chance to look at your living ass. If they're going out feet second, then they're watching you as they're leaving.
Okay.
So they can look at you, and if they look at you, you'll be dead in a few months' time.
Wow, I mean that's a stretch and a half, but like,
yeah,
I love the superstition of like the early days.
Oh yeah, but it was all just to like explain away the fact that everyone was dying at like age 25. So it was like, oh, you got looked at by a dead person as they were bringing them out, and so you have to go feet first. You can't let them look at you.
Yeah, it's like maybe it's just because we're like throwing our poop in the streets.
Yeah, it's mainly because like we don't understand the transmission of diseases.
Probably because we don't brush our teeth two times a day.
Which literally is what this episode is about, is that we really didn't understand the transmission of diseases back then. Also, everything should be covered in white linen or black cloth when someone died, like everything in the home.
Because chic.
Everything in the house just draped in the spookiest fabric you can find, because why not?
Early Gothic century chic.
Why not just lean right into it? I love it. I would do it now.
I'm here for it.
Then there's mirrors. We all know that mirrors are tough.
The most.
Mirrors are tough.
They are.
We love them, but we hate them.
We do, correct.
We love them because we can judge the hair,
the makes,
check if there's some lipstick on your teeth.
Yeah.
All that good stuff.
Yeah, just staring them for endless hours.
We hate them because they are often otherworldly portals to a damned hellscape that we don't understand.
To a damned hellscape.
So
here's my question.
Ask away.
Sometimes I do feel a little bit like I'm living in a damned hellscape occasionally from time to time.
We might be the other side of the mirror.
But here's the thing. I never hear about all like the portals to like, why do all the portals lead to bad places? You know what I mean?
Maybe because it's just like, it's all bad.
That sucks.
Isn't that depressing?
Yeah, maybe it is.
Or I don't know. Maybe
that is bleak.
Maybe it's what you make of it. Maybe we all just assume it's a bad place. So when we go there, they're like, you want a bad place? You got a bad place.
It's true.
Maybe if we assume it's some kind of whimsical, like, you know, nether realm where there's fairies that are nice. Not like
not the fae.
Not the fae. We
Not
don't
the fae.
talk about them. But like the actual, like, you know.
Like Tinkerbell.
Yeah, like
Well,
Tinkerbell's over there.
She's
She's kind of a dick.
Yeah.
Like the girls watch Tinkerbell and I'm like, don't listen. Tinkerbell has a
like that.
temper. I'm
She
like,
does.
like get over yourself, girlfriend.
When steam comes out of her ears.
Yeah, she's mad. But you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, I do.
You know, maybe there's like little goblins that are happy and will give you pie. When
Or
you
like
get there.
it's just like a tropical beach, but it's
I don't
fall
want that.
time at the tropical beach, but like warm on the tropical beach, but
No.
like it's fall all at
This
the same
sounds
time,
awful.
and you get to have like an apple cider drink, and
No,
you
'cause-
get to have
no,
a
'cause
pumpkin patch over there.
I hate that the
and-
beach was interwoven into this.
But those are I like the beach,
This
but I
is-
also like fall.
This is your other portal.
It is. Well, yours is literally just a spooky forest.
Oh, hell yeah. A spooky forest in the fall with a graveyard nearby.
Yeah.
And
But like, what's
an
the
apple
best
orchard
thing
to
there?
the left.
And like who's
And
there?
a pumpkin patch straight ahead.
And what do you get to do?
I get to pick pumpkins.
Yes.
I get to take hay rides.
Okay, yep.
To very, very well produced haunted houses.
Okay.
Corn mazes.
Okay.
Haunted
Hay rides.
mazes. All
Mazes,
those corn
mazes.
mazes.
Sure,
there
sure.
you go. All of that.
Okay.
There's apple cider donuts.
Yeah, there are. We had
There's
some of those this
endless ingredients for me to bake endless amounts of fall food.
I love it.
I think that's what's on the other side of the mirror for me.
I didn't think mine through enough.
You didn't. You didn't,
I'll get
but
back
it's
to you
okay.
later. I think shopping, like free,
Yeah.
free designer clothing.
That would be on your side.
fits
for sure.
me.
But unfortunately, this all sounds great.
Yeah.
The unfortunate reality, though, is like
Portals are not good.
I
usually.
don't think mirrors really lead to that, unfortunately, or at least we don't think they do.
Yeah.
So when someone dies, you got to cover that mirror. Cover that mirror.
I
Cover
did
it.
know that.
Do that.
The whole act of covering a mirror seems so creepy to
Very
me.
spooky.
Like, oh, I gotta cover that. But then you just
gotta cover
uncover
that
it, like
mirror.
when the dead person's gone.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, too, you can't just cover the mirror. Like, you can't just be like, oh, I'll do it, guys. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, like
no.
about this.
The oldest person in the home has to cover the mirror, or they have to turn the mirrors to face the wall. It has to be
For
the oldest.
some reason, that's creepier to me.
Right? Turning the mirror to face the wall.
Yeah, I don't like that.
Yeah,
That's
it's
very Blair
strange.
Witch Project of everyone.
And this is so they thought that they were fearing that the person who died could actually become trapped in the mirror because once the spirit leaves, I picture it like the spirit leaves the body, like, or this is what they're thinking happens, and just like ping pongs around the room. And so you need to give it as many like just holes for it to like go whoop and through. It's like pinball.
Yeah,
And it's
yeah.
like it just goes dun, 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 and then like it finally hits that like open like whoosh out the window.
And also, why is the spirit so confused? Because is the spirit not just the person and the body is the vessel?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe, I mean, I imagine it's stressful, like vacating your worldly body for the next. So maybe it's just like that you're stressed and you don't understand what's going on.
Yeah.
So you start ping ponging everywhere. And if a mirror is there,
That's true.
It's going to act like a window or a door and you're going to go through it, but you're going to go into this mirror realm and you're going to be stuck there.
Wow.
And then I don't know how to get you out.
horrible.
I don't know how to get you out. I'm just me. I'm just Elena. I don't know.
Do you know how to get them out?
I don't know how to get them out.
I think thou doth protest too much.
I just don't know. Well, and also, while you're doing this, by the way, eldest person in the house,
Covering the mirrors or turning them around.
make sure that you don't accidentally look into the mirror before this is done and see your own reflection.
Honey, I am far too vain.
Yeah, because some people think that means you're next. If you see your reflection in the mirror while you're turning it around. You would be dead in a few months' time because of your goddamn vanity.
If you see yourself in the mirror while you're turning
Yeah.
the mirror around, like that just seems like
So while you're turning it around, you
impossible.
just have to like look up,
Impossible.
like don't look. And so you got to make sure those mirrors are turned or covered and that the body is out of the home and in the ground safely before you turn them around or uncover them.
Okay.
You can't do it. And also, this one's interesting. I don't think this is done now, but let me know. Sometimes they would have a family member literally inhale the last like dying breath of the dying family member.
That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my entire life. Like that's why you died next.
Yeah. I mean,
What?
that's
Like I'm dying.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want...
Yeah,
no.
for sure. It's like that.
I love you so much, but
Yeah,
I would
not inhaling
literally
your dying
never.
breath.
Like, I'm good. I'll watch
not doing
it and
it.
I'll cry about it, but
I'll cry about
but I'm not gonna eat it. I'm gonna eat your dying breath.
I'm also not going to.
It's okay.
It's not a cuisine I'm looking to taste, but
Not a cuisine. not a kid's cuisine.
No.
I'm excited for.
like death rattle cuisine is not in the freezer section of your local grocery store. But now almost every mention, and I say all this because during that time, a lot of people were dying of a lot of different things.
You don't say.
And so people were dying all over the place, oftentimes at a young age. And so people needed reasons. They medical technology was not advanced. Medicine was really not telling you, like, here's what a germ is, here's what a bacteria is, here's what a virus is. So they were just looking for anything that could explain what the hell was happening around them and why people were just kicking it at an alarming rate, usually in families.
Yeah.
So now almost every mention of a vampire panic that happened, because they happened all over the place. I definitely want to revisit this again because there's so many. I could have gone on for hours and hours.
So crazy to me.
Now, when you see a vampire panic mention, especially in New England at this time, it's usually because there was a massive consumption outbreak.
Yes.
Consumption is in tuberculosis, but they didn't know it as tuberculosis back then. They called it consumption, and they called that because it literally consumes the sufferer. If you didn't know what it was, you would just be watching someone become consumed by this disease. So they called it consumption. Now, obviously, we know it as tuberculosis. At the time, it was also called the Great White Plague because it made its sufferers unbelievably pale.
Ooh, like us.
Like us. It was a very big deal in New England and elsewhere, but I'm concentrating on New England, obviously. We know a lot about it now. It's an infectious bacterial disease. It attacks the lungs. It really came to play in New England in the 1730s. Health officials in New England started recording mortality rates in the area in 1786 for the disease. And between 1786 and 1800, so 14 years, 2% of the population of New England had died of consumption.
Wow.
2%. That's like a lot.
I was gonna say in New England.
Exactly. The disease itself is horrific.
Yeah.
It caused a crazy hacking cough. Blood would spew out constantly each time you coughed eventually. There was debilitating pain involved, a punishing fever, extreme exhaustion. It would start with like a little blood each time, and then eventually you would be like straight up vomiting blood.
Oh my God, that's like, I can't even handle that.
Now, the person who was infected would also lose all color and seemingly waste away. And it was kind of like a slow end usually.
Sounds like it.
Yeah, it often was slow because they wouldn't be able to eat.
Right.
Like they would just literally waste away. They didn't want to eat.
They're just vomiting up blood
Yeah,
anyways.
and it literally seemed to most people at the time that something, like some unseen force, was violently sucking the life out of their loved ones, and they were just powerless to stop it. Mm-hmm. And if you think about it, they're pale. You're walking into their room and they have blood dripping down the sides of their mouths. They are, they're doing these hacking coughs. They're probably awake at night. They're probably it's like, sounds like a vampire to me.
Yeah.
Like because they were known to like all the time have blood just
dripping
like dripping down from the sides of
Isn't
their
that
mouths.
so crazy that people were like, well,
gotta be that. But on top of all this is the fact that entire families would just be wiped out from this. So once one of them got it, it was like a ticking time bomb to see if it attacked the other family members in the house. And at this point, disease itself was just not understood.
Right, not at all.
Consumption, what they were understanding it was, did not understand that at all. They didn't understand transmission in the slightest. They didn't know that this was something you could pass to somebody else.
They weren't wearing their masks.
So they would just be everyone hanging out together. And if someone had it, they were not like quarantined from the rest of the family. Like, no, they were hacking in your face at breakfast and sleeping in the same room with 14 brothers and sisters just spewing all over each other.
No. That's not the way to take care of that.
And
it's called quarantine, baby.
And that's the thing. So they didn't understand that was they would just
of course
live
not.
life. So they didn't understand it. So it would just go through the entire home and they were like, what's happening?
Right.
Must be the devil.
Must be a vampire.
And cures obviously were not like what we have today.
Not at all.
So cures, they came up with things like drinking brown sugar and water.
I mean, sounds really sweet.
And my personal favorite, frequent horseback riding.
To shake the devil out of you?
No, it was because no, because it was allowing the patient to have fresh air, but it was fresh air that you were not having to become out of breath to get. Because you were sitting on a horse.
Okay.
So the horse was giving you the fresh air.
I guess they tried.
You could get on that horse, go riding through the country, hacking up blood.
Go spread your tuberculosis everywhere.
Just spew all those, tuberculosis little balls everywhere.
Good.
Just spread it around like wildfire. But you're sucking in that fresh colonial air as you do it.
Yeah.
And in 1692, a doctor named Dr. Thomas Sydenham published this about this cure that he had found. Because he came out and was like, you got to ride a horse.
I got this.
He said, quote, but the best remedy hitherto discovered in this case is riding sufficiently long journeys on horseback. Provide this exercise be long enough continued, observing that the middle-aged person must persist in it much longer than children or young persons. So if you old, get on that horse and you got to start riding and don't stop riding. But if you're a child, you can ride for a little bit and then get off.
What's that song about, like Mustang Sally?
Mustang Sally. But yeah, get on your horse and start riding through the country.
Get on your high horse.
That's going to help
Get
you
your
out, I guess.
tuberculosis out of here.
I mean, at the time and even later with tuberculosis patients, fresh air was a huge thing.
Yeah, we said that in the Eastern State Penitentiary, they had special cells designed.
Open air cells.
Yeah.
And they would in tuberculosis wards, they would have beds that the head of the bed would be outside. Mm-hmm. And there would be like an awning over you to like protect you from the weather, but your head would just be hanging outside.
Wow.
Yeah.
It is interesting, like what they tried to do, and you can see the logic in some of it.
The wheels were turning.
They were
turning.
There just wasn't a lot of gas.
They were getting the right idea. They knew it was lungs. They knew they were on the right path,
Yeah.
We all got to get there. It's going to take a while.
Yeah.
But this was also really heavily into the period of time when doctors would just bleed people.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you have a cold, let's cut you.
Let's bleed.
You have a headache, let's cut you. You want to dance with the devil in the pale moonlight? Let's cut you.
Let's do it.
Like, they would we're going to cut you. That's what we're going to do.
I'll cut you.
Hi, I have a hangnail. Let's cut you and see what happens.
Let's
that's
do it.
just all. They just hemorrhaged out everybody. I don't know why that was it was just the blood. They were like, we know blood's important. We're sure of that.
And it is.
And they were right.
But let's
blood
not
is
get
very
rid of
important.
it.
But they were like, I feel like if we just cut you open and just drain a ton of it out of you, we'll figure it out. I don't know. They were wrong. But
they were?
So a lot of tuberculosis patients and consumption patients would just be, that's the same thing. I don't know why I just said it as two different diseases. But they knew it as consumption. We know it as tuberculosis.
Yeah, you're just clarifying.
Just clarifying. But a lot of them would be bled. Just I think George Washington was bled when he had a cold and he got an infection.
And he literally would have lived.
Just didn't need to be bled.
Right. Who does?
Who really needs to be bled?
Not me.
No. Eventually, it became a belief that the first one who died was going to return at night to suck the life out of the remaining family members.
Obviously.
Because they were obviously, if it's just knocking everybody down in a row, that first one that did it, the whole thing wasn't that that person was evil per se. It was that some evil entity was using their body as a host.
Okay.
That was the idea. For the most part, I'm sure some people thought their family members were evil. I'm sure we all have family members that we'd be like, I think they are the evil entity. I don't think they're the host.
I think it's them.
Yeah. Now, so they were okay, we should just start digging up graves to figure this out. We got to dig up the corpses.
Again, obvious.
Because the corpses are coming out of their graves at night. So let's see what's the haps underground here.
What's the 411 underground?
What is the 411?
What's the hot goss from the cemetery?
So it was a very common practice to exhume bodies at this time, just to be have they moved? What's going on in there?
Maybe.
Now, so they were they are becoming soldiers after death. We need to figure out who patient zero is, basically, in each family.
Right.
Because remember, back then, it's not like they're getting their news from medical journals or the news.
No.
They're getting them from local taverns.
Yeah.
And people popping into local taverns and being like, have you heard the word from Purd? He said that if you bleed this person out after exhuming their body, like, it's ridiculous. And apparently in New England, taverns were like everywhere, which is not shocking to me.
They still are at this
they were
very
popular.
moment.
They were very popular.
And still are.
Pretty famous dude, like infamous dude named Cotton Mather. I think a lot of New Englanders know this man.
I've heard of him.
He was quoted as saying in the late 1600s that every other house in Boston was one of these quote unquote public houses. Now, people told all of their hot goss and any intel about their travels or things happening around them in these taverns. So it becomes more obvious how some serious could be stirred this way and make everyone think these crazy cures are going to work, for your vampirically afflicted family member.
Well, and you're probably desperate, so you're
Of course.
like, please help my vampiric afflicted family member.
Because you just want your family members to stop dying of this horrific disease. So you're like, if you're telling me that it's a vampire and I have to burn the person in the ground, I'll
do
that.
anything.
And the taverns would be near meeting houses or sometimes act as the meeting houses of the time. So they were like really...
food and drink, baby.
I'm saying they would also definitely always be near the whipping posts, the gallows, or the stocks, because all of those things like really bring in thirsty customers.
Central points in town.
It's just good, it's just good planning.
It is.
Really.
It's architecturally genius.
So to stop this whole consumption thing from taking over entire families, often they would exhume the corpse of the first infected, and this could happen just with family members present, with family and neighbors who knew the deceased, or sometimes it would raise the attention of the town elders and the clergymen, and they would all vote on it, and it became a whole shebang, and
Imagine
everyone
voting
would come
on something
in.
like that.
Yeah, they would vote to be like, yeah, we should exhume Henry over there and see if
everyone
he's a vampire.
say aye.
Let's do this. No, the whole idea was you take the person out, you check their heart and vital organs and see if there's fresh blood in there. Mainly, I guess they were looking for bright red blood as opposed to congealed darker blood, because that would be old blood.
Right.
If there was fresh blood, you had yourself a vampire, and you better put a stop to this.
It's weird that we were talking about fresh blood, it's weird that we're talking about fresh blood and we talked about the Jinx.
The Jinx and that theme song.
The Eels.
Is great.
So good. Sorry.
Fresh blood, good theme song.
That's how my brain works.
It's a great song. Now, because according to an article published in 1896 in the American Anthropologist, it was by George R. Stetson, it says, quote, "In New England, the vampire superstition is unknown by its proper name. It is there believed that consumption is not a physical but a spiritual disease, obsession, or visitation, that as long as the body of a dead consumptive relative has blood in its heart, it is proof that an occult influence steals from it for death, and is at work draining the blood of the living into the heart of the dead and causing his rapid decline. In some places, the specter appears as in the flesh, walks, talks, infests villages, ill-uses both men and beasts, sucks the blood of their near relations, makes them ill, and finally causes their death. The late Monsieur de Vessemont."
Are you using Babbel too?
I am. You could tell, right? That was really good.
Wow, good job.
Monsieur de Vessemont,
Monsieur de Vessemont,
counselor of the Chamber of the Courts of Bar, was informed by public report in Moravia that it was common enough in that country to see men who had died sometime before, quote, present themselves at a party and sit down to table with persons of their acquaintances without saying a word and nodding to one of the party. The one indicated would infallibly die after some days.
Who made that up?
I feel like that's hearsay, but I don't know.
Was Ann Putnam here?
I believe she was. She was around. It says about 1735 on the frontier of Hungary, a dead person appeared after... Now, this is in an article like the American Anthropologist.
Yeah,
what I'm
this is
reading
for
from
real,
right now.
guys.
This is not like somebody being like, let me tell you legends.
This
They're
is
like, no,
not
this
a
is real.
blog.
So about 1735, on the frontier of Hungary, a dead person appeared after 10 years' burial and caused the death of his father. In 1730, in Turkish Serbia, it was believed that those who had been passive vampires during life became active after death. In Russia, that the vampire does not stop his unwelcome visits at a single member of the family, but extends his visits to the last member, which is the Rhode Island belief as well. In the same village resides Mr. Redacted, It's redacted.
Mr. Vampire.
An intelligent man, by trade a Mason. I feel like his name was probably like Mr. Mason. They're like, by trade a Mason. I'm like, you gave it away. That's it.
I love it.
Who is a living witness of the superstition and of the efficacy of the treatment of the dead, which it prescribes. He informed me that he had lost 2 brothers by consumption. Upon the attack of the second brother, his father was advised by Mr. Redacted, the head of the family before mentioned, to take up the first body and burn its heart. But the brother attacked, objected to the sacrilege, and in consequence, subsequently died. Mm-hmm. When he was attacked by the disease in his turn, Redacted's advice prevailed, and the body of the brother last dead was exhumed, and living blood being found in the heart and in circulation, it was cremated. And the sufferer began immediately to mend, and stood before me an hale, hearty, and vigorous man of 50 years. When questioned as to his understanding of the miraculous influence, he could suggest nothing, and did not recognize the superstition even by name. He remembered that the doctors did not believe in its efficacy, but he and many others did. His father saw the brother's body and the arterial blood. The attitude of several other persons in regard to the practice was agnostic, either from fear of public opinion or other reasons, and their replies to my inquiries were in the same temper of mind as that of a blind man in the Gospel of St. John, who did not dare to express his belief, but answered and said, whether he was a sinner or no, I know not. One thing I know, that whereas I was blind, now I see.
So poetic at the end, but like all the way through, I'm like, you're really
he got literary
stretching
at the end.
Guy.
So this is stuff that is like to really show you that this is stuff that people are taking seriously.
Yeah,
these are stories that people were like, this happened. People were mended because of this. Like consumption was gone because we burned the heart of the first person to die in the family.
I can't imagine living during this time.
It would have been a wild, wild time to live during. And apparently in Maine and in Massachusetts, mainly Plymouth, they would just open the graves and flip the corpse over on its face.
Oh.
They were like, that'll take care of it. They felt good about that.
Interesting. I love that they're like, you know what, we're not going to do too much.
Yeah,
like, keep it simple, stupid.
Exactly. Like Kiss. All right. It's just let's chill. Let's keep this casual.
Right.
Let's just flip it over. And then he can't get out now.
How would he get out?
How are they going to know?
I was literally.
How are they going to know?
How would they know?
How would they know? And apparently it worked for us. So, and
hey,
that was it.
Massachusetts out here doing the best.
Like flip them over on their face and just slayed a harbinger of evil today.
I had a big day at work today. Tossed a dead guy right around and, you know,
flipped him right over.
Saving lives day by day.
Just saving everybody
from
death.
Cook me up a soup.
Well, in Connecticut, Vermont, and Rhode Island, though, they got like real gnarly with it.
Oh.
Connecticut, Vermont, and Rhode Island, you were very metal back then.
Weird that Massachusetts wasn't.
Yeah, I think Massachusetts at the time was like, hi, we had that whole Salem thing. We got real gnarly with it, so like it's your turn now.
Yeah, like we very
took a
tired.
Breather. We just took a little nap
day off
during this time. They were like, we're just gonna flip dead people over. We're not gonna do anything sacrilegious to them. We're just gonna
don't worry, we'll be back at it.
We're gonna let Connecticut, Vermont, and Rhode Island take care of this right now.
It's fine.
So first in Rhode Island, vampires were thought to only be women, and only between the ages of 15 and 22.
Oh, we're in the clear. That's like, such a random ass age.
Like what, Rhode Island? What?
15 and 22 on your 23rd birthday, you are safe, BB.
You're good. And everywhere else, it was not age or gender specific. It was just Rhode Island that thought that. In Connecticut, Vermont, and Rhode Island as well, they would exhume the person. This is when they would check for the fresh blood in the heart. If so, they would cut out the heart, burn the heart, and sometimes they would even use the fumes and smoke from the smoldering heart as a cure.
Oh?
Yeah. They would also have people inhale the smoke from the burning tuberculosis heart because they thought that would aid in staying healthy.
I'm willing to bet that it probably didn't.
Yikes. No.
Not good.
That's a wicked bad idea.
Wicked bad idea, Ken.
That's a wicked bad idea.
Not smart.
Sometimes, though, they would be plagued with this vampire curse for years as it just mowed down family member after family member. And they would not discover what they believed was the cause for those years.
Yeah.
So sometimes when they finally found who they believed to be the origin of the vampire activity, they would be dead for so long that there was no heart left to take out.
Yeah. I was wondering when they were going to run into that.
Yeah, like, and we'll see what happens when there's no heart to take out later on.
Oh, I feel like it's going to be wild.
And by later on, I mean we're going to find it out in the next case. So the next case comes from Griswold, Connecticut. And we are going to start this kind of recently in 1990.
Oh, okay.
More recent than the 1700s, at least.
Yeah.
1990 to me still feels like 10 years ago, so I don't understand time.
Oh, no, like, I was saying, like, oh, okay, like, wow, we're starting there.
it
But, like,
just-
that sounds recent to me.
Yeah.
Recent enough.
Well, in 1990, 3 boys were playing outside. And now it was 1990, so they were not, like, scooting around on a hoverboard or, like, playing games where you have to, like, use technology.
They
to
were
find,
outside.
like, a Pokemon or something. Like, they were playing in a sand and gravel pit in the town because...
Yeah. That's what you did.
Fun. Like, good, wholesome fun.
Because Sandlot.
Yeah. While they are playing...
What?
Because Sandlot.
Sandlot.
Those aren't the same thing.
No, I know, but like sand, it's like Sandlot. It made me think of it.
Yeah.
Sandlot.
A baseball field, a gravel pit.
Yeah, Sandlot.
Honestly, some baseball fields felt like gravel
Because
pits.
holes.
Because of dirt.
Don't hurt.
Doesn't. Now, while they're playing, suddenly a very old-looking human skull just starts rolling down the hill next to them.
Yippee-ki-yay.
Like, just bloop, bloop, bloop.
Hey, boys.
Like, seemingly disturbed from the earth by their playing. So it had just rolled out of its burial spot and was just, like, hanging out with them.
That'll change you.
Luckily, it certainly will. Luckily, they ran home and were like, Mom, Dad, help. And the parents contacted authorities, so everybody did what they were supposed to do here.
Good.
And at first, the authorities were like, well, this must be a serial killer at work. Like, we found graves. This is bad.
Yeah.
And they thought this because another skull popped out of the earth as well while they were looking for this other one.
So, like, that makes sense.
2 skulls rolling down the hill.
Yeah,
Which-
right.
Whoa.
You're like, what's going on here?
And at the time, it's important to note that a serial killer had just been caught in the area.
Oh.
His name was Michael Ross, and he brutally raped and killed at least 8 girls and women between the ages of 14 and 25. He did this between the years of 1981 and 1984.
Wow.
So they were thinking... Maybe
these
this
just,
is
like,
just
people
victims we
didn't
don't know about,
find?
or it's a new serial killer. Because now they're like, well, we now know they're serial killers. So
Yeah.
But when they started looking at these skulls, they were like, these are like way older. Like,
Right.
these are not recent skulls. So they called in the state archaeologist named Nick Bellatoni, and he came in to take a look. He was like, yup, these are old and definitely not the work. He's like, can confirm those are old. And he said these are not the work of a modern day serial killer. When they dug a bit further, he came to the conclusion that this sand and gravel pit was actually on top of an old family cemetery.
Okay.
Later, it was identified as the Walton family cemetery from the 1800s. There were 29 graves.
Wow.
7 men, 8 women, and 14 children were present.
God.
And they now had to be moved, like, carefully and respectfully.
Yeah.
Now, at the time of their deaths, these women, men, and children were all put in pretty plain wood coffins, as was common at the time.
Right.
Once they got to, so they're looking through these coffins, they're just like trying to identify people, trying to see how many like women and children they have.
Yeah.
Once they got to the 4th coffin that they were looking at, though, it was marked. And they were like, that's strange. And it was strangely marked.
Uh-oh.
It had brass tacks, like drilled into the top of it. And the tacks spelled out JB55.
Okay.
And they were like, that's weird, on like the lid of a coffin.
Why is this the only person labeled?
So they opened it up. And they don't find a skeleton just lying there.
Oh, God.
They find a partially disarticulated skeleton, like intentionally disarticulated.
Oh, man.
The skull had been literally cut off the neck and placed on the chest, and under it also on the chest were the man's 2 femurs.
What?
They had been placed in the arrangement of a cross with the skull on top of them. They also found broken ribs and evidence of lesions of the ribs that was indicative that this person probably died of consumption.
Right.
Or at least had consumption.
Right.
Which they died of it. So obviously, they had hacked this guy's head off in an attempt to stop him from coming back as a vampire and killing the rest of the family.
What?
His chest was obviously cut into as well. And they said they believed that they went into his chest to find his heart. And when they couldn't find his heart because he had been gone for too long, that's
off?
when they took his femurs off and his head off, and they put it in that cross pattern to like do what they could.
That is bananas.
Yeah. And after inspection, they believed he was likely dug up about 4 or 5 years after his initial death, because the family was probably going through trying to figure out who the initial person was.
Right.
And like I said, they couldn't find the heart, so that's why they did this. Now, his bones were sent to the National Museum of Health and Medicine in Silver Springs, Maryland, and they were able to get some DNA from the thigh bone.
We loves a DNA test.
It wasn't until recently, though, that they could actually take that DNA and do anything with it, because it was in 1990. They were like, we can do a little with it, but
It was
now
like just
we can really
happening.
do stuff. Now they used Y chromosomal DNA profiling and genealogy surname prediction methods, and they figured out his last name was Barber. They were able to find what his last name was.
I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah.
Say it again.
Genealogy surname prediction methods.
I didn't even know that was a thing.
And Y chromosomal DNA profiling is pretty cool. It's basically like a method of DNA typing that allows you to look at the patrilineal strands of DNA, so the ones that go into the father's ancestry, which helps with the surname thing, especially for bones long since deceased, because Y DNA chromosomes are passed down from father to son, and they're basically unchanged as they pass. So they use this information to search for barbers who lived in the area.
Right.
Because, at the time, obviously everyone's surnames are important, especially back then.
Yeah.
Like back then, surnames, that was
Everything.
the identifier. So once they were able to trace that DNA, that Y chromosome, back to that surname, that's when they started searching in Connecticut for barbers who had died at the time that the age were aged to. And they ended up finding a farmer named John Barber, JB.
Hello.
And he had died in Griswold, and he was about 55 years old.
Okay, so whoop, there it is.
So they also found an obituary from 1826 for a 12-year-old named Nicholas Barber.
Oh, that's sad.
And his father, John Barber, was included in that.
Ah.
Upon further inspection, a coffin with the initials NB13 was also found.
Oh, so that totally
Nicholas
confirms
Barber.
it.
And it was near John Barber's. So only John's was the way it was arranged like that, though.
Right.
And the position of the body was totally different from everyone else's. Like, everyone else was in that normal burial position, hands over the chest or by the sides.
Yeah.
So he was buried, but exhumed when further family members were definitely suffering from consumption, like Nicholas.
Right.
And so they did what they had been told to do, which, because when you see this, you're like, what the fuck? Like, you hacked the head off of a corpse. What are you doing?
Yeah.
But they were told to do this. Like, they were confronted with what they were told was vampiric activity.
And it was
was killing children.
Crazy to say, but it was the norm. Like,
they were told this is what is happening.
so that's what you do.
And when you don't know any better, you have no kind of
Right.
science to back anything up. So it's like you're just going off of
obviously for us it sounds crazy, but if we had lived back then, we would have been doing this shit.
yeah, that's what you were told to do. And when no heart was found, this is all they knew to do was you got to put it in the sign of the cross and put his head on top of it, and you'll be fine.
Call it a day.
It's crazy. So a little side note about consumption too, because this is why it can be very difficult for people to trace it. There are different ways in which it can present in different people. Some people are asymptomatic, and it's called latent TB infection. They carry the disease, but they can't pass it until it turns active. So they're not passing it to people while it's latent. Mm-hmm. They show no symptoms themselves. Other people have it for years sometimes, and they struggle and slowly succumb to it.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And others have what is known as the galloping variety. And this can either be a latent TB infection that suddenly becomes active and goes hard and fast, or it's just one that comes on quick. And it's quick, it's merciless, and it's fast, and it takes you down to the end just as fast. Boom. That's why it's galloping.
Right.
Folklorist Michael Bell is known to be one of the leading researchers on this vampire panic that occurred. And I read in one of his interviews that people also believe Edgar Allan Poe had the asymptomatic type of TB.
Why?
Which definitely could have been true, because he was around a lot of he was around a lot of active TB sufferers.
Right.
His mother being the first one who died of consumption when he was only 3 years old.
That's so sad.
His wife later, his wife died of it. His everybody around him was dying of TB. And in fact, Poe wrote a story you may all know called The Mask of the Red Death.
Yes.
I love this story.
That's a good one.
It's such a good Poe story. It's one of my favorites. It was about a plague consuming society and mostly starting to eat away at the poorest and least fortunate in society.
Right.
And the plague makes you feel intense pain and bleed from the pores, which sounds a lot like an artistic rendering of consumption to me.
It really does.
And eventually, the richer in society begin to fear that it will leap the bounds of class and come for them as well. So they think they can use their privileged status to hide away and wait it out till it's gone. Mm-hmm. They don't actually care about those people suffering in the shadows. They just want to escape it themselves.
Right.
And the character, Prince Prospero, decides to quarantine in his, like, giant mansion. Mm-hmm. But he makes it glamorous, like quarantine, but make it glamorous by throwing a lavish party for everyone hiding away, like all these, like, nobles. And he hides himself away and, like, 1,000 other fancy noble guests in his fortress. And at one point, there's, like, all these rooms in the story where, like, it's all these different, like, lit rooms. Mm-hmm. It's really cool. Sounds like a cool party until the end, but until the very end.
That's usually how most parties are.
And the end really
cool
fucks
until
it up.
the end. Yeah.
At one point, they notice a figure standing there in a funeral shroud that's like blood spattered, and they're wearing a mask. And they don't know who this figure is, and they all just kind of like follow it from room to room while the prince is like holding a dagger and acts like he can fight this thing.
You can't.
And eventually, the figure is cornered, and it turns to face the prince. And the prince just sees it and falls down dead in his tracks. And when the rest of the revelers, like, you know, unmask the figure, there's nothing underneath.
Isn't that
and
so
everyone
creepy?
Just falls down and dies of the plague.
It's wild.
And the last line of the story is, "And darkness and decay and the Red Death held illimitable dominion over all." And I think that's so rad. I just love Poe.
You do.
Oh, I love Poe. It's
how
such
can
a
you
good
not?
one. And it's so relevant. I mean, when you think of that, it's really relevant today.
Of course it is.
Like with what's going on, which is very interesting. It's also very relevant with consumption. And considering Poe was surrounded by the disease his whole life, it was definitely about that, in my opinion.
I mean, yeah.
It's also a really strong allegory for the fact that, like, no one escapes death, not even the rich, which is another thing that is very relevant right now with what's going on. Like, no one can escape it.
Right.
You're not safe from it.
Right.
Rich, poor, everything in between.
It's not discriminatory.
Just saying. So that's interesting. Either way, speaking of Griswold, Connecticut, now that we've talked about John Baker, there's a gnarly case of vampire mania that hails from the village of Jewett City, which is inside the town of Griswold.
Okay.
On March 9th, 1845, a family started to fall to the plague of consumption. On that day, 24-year-old Lemuel Billings Ray passed away from consumption. He was the son of Lucy and Henry B. Ray. By July 3rd, 1849, his father, Henry B. Ray, had died of consumption as well. His brother, who was 26 years old, Elisha Ray, died of that on February 1st, 1851, and soon more family members were all falling ill to consumption. And finally, they were like, wait a second, it's gotta be ghouls. Must be ghouls. So in 1854, another son, Henry Nelson Ray, was coming down with it, and he was starting to waste away. And seemingly to them by the hands of an unseen force that was just sucking the life right out of him. So that unseen force was germs. But they went with the bolder choice, which is vampire.
Germs, vampire, same thing.
It's germs. Like, the answer is germs, but they went with vampire.
Multiple choice, pixie, germs.
They went with vampire today. So they did what everyone else was doing at the time. It was in vogue to exhume recent victims of consumption and see if there was fresh blood in their heart.
Yeah.
So if there was, you got yourself a vampire, you got to get rid of that organ or the entire corpse itself to break the curse of consumption, or the surviving family members are all just going to keep dying. So they dug up Lemuel, Henry, and Elisha. And Elisha was said to have fresh blood in the corpse's heart.
Dun, dun, dun.
I mean, they were also the last one to die, so the corpse was the freshest.
I don't know, Elena. Could be vampires.
Could be. And I don't know about fresh blood, but, like, who am I to argue? I wasn't there.
Yeah.
Like, I was not present at this exhumation. I was only 2. I'm just kidding. I wasn't.
I was like, I feel like I heard the date wrong.
It was in the 1840s.
I was only 2.
I was just being mean to myself. But so they figured Henry could go back into his otherworldly home because they were like, he's probably good.
That's fine.
But Alicia and Lemuel had to go. They were like, no, I feel it in both of you. So you're going. Lemuel for good measure, I suppose, because like he didn't have any heart. But like,
right.
Like, yeah, let's get rid of him too.
Bye.
So they burned them in their coffins, essentially just like cremating their remains.
Okay.
But they did it in a huge bonfire on site, which was spooky and ominous. And
Yeah,
they figured,
you don't say.
That would do the trick. And I guess you can find the site of this grave. This graveyard is still there. The site of the bonfire is still there.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So they figured that was going to do the trick, but it didn't. It didn't. Henry Nelson Ray died the same year, very soon after, and his wife and 3 children also died of consumption.
Oh, that's so sad.
It did not do it. This made the papers, because of like the whole bonfire thing,
Go off.
and they were referred to and still are referred to as the Jewett City vampires.
Wow.
Which, like, what a name
Like
to get
still
afterwards.
are referred to?
Yeah,
like maybe we
that's-
should stop.
It's like such a metal nickname, though.
Maybe we should recognize
nickname.
what actually happened.
Exactly. But you know what? None of us are there. I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't know what they found.
I don't know.
Now that brings us to the case which some people may know, Mercy Lena Brown.
It does sound familiar.
In 1883, George T. Brown was a respected farmer in the town of Exeter, Rhode Island.
Exeter.
His wife, Mary Eliza, died of consumption that year in 1883. 7 months after she died, their daughter, Mary Olive, died of consumption as well. She was only 20. Shortly after that, his son Edwin was showing signs of consumption because they were probably all eating at the same kitchen table.
Yes.
He was like pale, didn't want to eat anything, was getting that hacking cough. They actually sent Edwin to Colorado for a while to see if he could get better air, which like
Okay.
they hoped it would make him better, and he just got worse.
I've definitely heard this.
He got worse. He came back home. Meanwhile, while this is going on, neighbors have been talking to Farmer Brown and the local doctor, which was a man named Dr. Metcalf. And he had heard that a few of them wanted Farmer Brown to have his wife and daughter Mary Olive exhumed to see if there was fresh blood in their hearts. Mm-hmm. If there was, then it was likely that they were sucking the life out of Edwin, and that was the reason for his suffering. So he thought this was nuts. They weren't going to like be burning hearts or anything.
Yeah.
He was like, no. But he was like, you know what? They just kept coming at me. The neighbors like won't shut up about it. I'm starting to think it might be real. And either that or he was believing it and he was like a bit embarrassed to admit it.
Yeah,
like,
sure.
Maybe, but either way, he said he just gave in.
They were starting to sway him.
Somebody was swaying him. And this is when Edwin was sent to Colorado to try that last-ditch effort to get him better. Mm-hmm. And while he was there, their other daughter, 19-year-old Mercy Lena Brown, was showing signs of becoming very ill with consumption as well.
Of course.
She progressed very quickly. Like, she clearly had the galloping kind.
I was just going to say that.
And she died and was buried in January 1892. Also, before she died, a doctor came to her bedside to try to perform some kind of aid on her or like comfort her symptoms. And he just looked at Mercy and was like, yeah, sorry, she's at the end. Like, there's nothing we can do. Don't even try.
Awesome.
Like, way harsh, Ty.
Thanks, Doc.
Like, that's like, wow.
Way harsh, Doc.
So now Farmer Brown is ready to do this. He's like, okay, now that Mercy has died, like,
he's got no one left.
He's a believer. So he calls the doctor and says he would like them exhumed and he would like this doctor to perform an autopsy to see if there is fresh blood somewhere. So the doctor shows up at Shrub Hill Cemetery on March 17th, 1892, and they've already exhumed the bodies of the wife and Mary Olive. Mm-hmm. Both of them were dead for a while and were basically just skeletons.
Yeah.
Their hearts were not filled with blood and likely maybe not even there still.
I was wondering if they would even be there.
At least in Mary Eliza's case, the mother, I don't think hers was there.
Right.
Now, Mercy Lena had been buried for only 2 months and it was cold.
Yeah.
So she was not too bad in bad condition. She was kind of preserved in a way.
I was going to say, was she like slightly mummified?
Yeah, a little bit. So they removed her heart and liver, and reports say there was fresh blood in her heart, while other reports from the scene say that there was like normal old congealed blood. So there was blood.
The results vary.
We know there was blood. It should be noted also that Farmer Brown was not present at this exhumation and ritual, but there is nothing to say he didn't give his blessing. He just didn't want to be there, and I kind of get that.
I 100% get that.
Either way, they removed them, the liver and the heart, and took them to a rock nearby. Surrounding the rock, the liver and heart were burned to ashes.
Okay.
Once they were reduced to ash, They took some of the ashes and forced Edwin to eat them.
So that probably made him worse.
They felt this would cure him of his malady.
Probably not.
But 2 months later, Edwin died.
Oh man, another 2 months of that. Just
2
like
months.
horrible,
After
horrible
you
illness.
After you ate the ashes of your dead sister's heart and liver.
Yeah.
Now, interestingly, this news went way further than New England. And in 1896, and that's the last story I'm going to tell about it, but I just needed to end on this because it was interesting. In 1896, there was an article about this that Bram Stoker had read this article. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you know Bram Stoker. Whomst is that? Who? He was touring in the U.S. with his stage company at the time, and he had not yet finished Dracula. It came out in 1897, so the following year. Some people think this was the inspiration behind that because there are a lot of similarities between the illness and death of Mercy, Lena, and Lucy in Dracula. Mm-hmm. But that's a no, and I'm here to tell you that's a no.
You're like, it's not true. You heard it here first.
I've read in several sources that it took him upwards of 7 years for him to write Dracula, so the timeline doesn't add up, and he said it, he was like, no. But like,
no.
But who knows if maybe the story could have added like flavor to the already written manuscript? Like, he could have added a little bit of like flair. Like, ooh, like maybe he added some of the like little details in there. I don't know.
Maybe.
There's nothing to say that. But either way, the vampire panic of New England is so much further reaching than this. There's, I mean, a million other things, like
so
stories
interesting
about this. But I think the Mercy Brown one is the one that a lot of people hear.
Yeah.
Again, you can like see these gravestones. You can see these people really existed. The timelines add up. There's old newspaper articles to confirm all these. I read a bunch of different books about them that I'll link here because they were fascinating.
Oh my God, Elena was showing me her Kindle library the other day, and I was like, it's so funny too because it's all these terrifying books, and then it's like Vampirina, like, and the tale of the chef, and then it's like Bad Seed plays with new friends.
Yeah.
It's just funny.
I love it so much.
It's amazing.
My Kindle is a real it's a real chaotic
It's a real
journey.
dichotomy.
It's a real chaotic journey through my life. That's what it is.
Through my life.
But I think I had like 4 books on this that I just could not stop reading.
Yeah, because you were like, I read this one. Oh, and then I found this one. And then there was also this one.
I found another one.
Okay.
You're like, all right.
I was like, how long is this episode about to be?
And I was like, not too bad. I decided I was going to keep it to only a few
was
cases, but I definitely want to revisit this because
do a part 2.
It's real fascinating. So this might be like Vampire Panic of New England Part 1.
Yeah.
Or like Volume 1.
And like, yeah, I was going to say
And then
like
later
a
on
Spooky
down the
Roads
line.
kind of vibe.
Yeah, later on down the line, I'll throw another one in there.
I like it. I like it a lot.
But yeah, I hope you guys thought that was interesting. I thought it was a fun, like, spooky journey. And learning about consumption was, like, weirdly interesting.
It is.
It's, like, very fascinating to learn about.
Franklin gives this 5 paws.
I love that.
I mean,
5 whole paws.
I don't know.
He's only got
5
4,
beans.
but he'll give an extra one.
4 beans. He gives it a lot of props.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Meow.
All right. Well, this was super fun. I liked this a lot.
See, I had to bring it to like a fun spooky
Yeah,
place.
I needed that. I needed to sit here and not be like, I mean, I was horrified still.
I was going to say,
like,
I mean, consumption is not fun. But
it was
like,
different. Like, it wasn't like
a different thing.
Yeah. You know, it wasn't like, well, it was
It
still
wasn't
brutal.
the Sunset Strip Slayers or the Hillside Stranglers.
Correct. Well,
That's all that matters.
anyways, we hope that you keep listening.
And we hope you
Keep it weird. But that's where that when your family member's dying, you stand over them and you inhale their last breath because I think somebody might find that weird and I think you probably might get sick. So definitely don't do that. Thanks. Okay, bye.
If you like Morbid, you can listen early and ad-free right now by joining Wondery Plus in the Wondery app or on Apple Podcasts. Prime members can listen ad-free on Amazon Music. Before you go, tell us about yourself by filling out a short survey at Wondery.com/survey.